Hey everyone, welcome to the Underswell. I'm Derek Sabori. Thanks for being here. We'll dive in, and we're in. Alex,
we're in it.
Welcome to my live show. Welcome to the Underswell. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek, so much for having me.
I am really excited to have this conversation because we've known each other for a little while, but it was really fun in our prep call, getting to know you even better and just kind of hearing the backstory behind your story, your career story. I'm inspired by all the work that you're doing. You're doing so many different things. Alex Warneke, you are a data storyteller. You're a Salesforce professional, which is, I guess, in the bigger scheme, relatively new. Probably, maybe not, doesn't feel new anymore, but a strategic communications consultant and a whole bunch of different things. You're just an awesome person as well. We're going to dive into and cover all of that, right?
Love that. Yeah, let's do it.
So today what we'll do is we're going to talk about your pivot from science communicator, and that's what you were doing when we first met. We serve on the board together at Pangea Seed Foundation, which has been a great experience. Shout out to Trey and Akira and our team at Pangea Seed. But you've made a pivot from science communicator to Salesforce consultant. So we're going to talk about transferring all those skills and how to navigate our shifting career landscapes. And this is your phrase, and I really like it, but just cultivating transferable skills for your lifelong career. That's what you've become an expert in. And I want to talk about working on the road, because I know for years you were on the road. You and your husband were on the road, kind of doing some fun things. So tell me a little bit about. Let's start with the Pangea Seed. I want to know how did you meet Trey and Akira? How did you get connected with the team there?
Trey and Akira, man, love those two. Such good people, right? I've met them. Is it crazy to say over 10 years now?
It is. Yeah, it is crazy to say.
Wild. It's like, where does it go? I was actually working with a group called the Beneath the Waves Foundation, and we made science videos. Okay. And there was an installation called the Great West Coast Migration. I was living in San Diego at the time. And they had done, Trey and Akira with Pangea Seed had done a show kind of all the way down the California coast, ending in San Diego. And so we did a little bit of a collab, and I still remember the first time I met them. And I just loved everything about Pangea Seed. I love the use of art and science to really connect people to these ocean conservation messages, raising awareness using street art. That's something that I'm really passionate about. Mm-hmm. And they're just amazing people. And we stayed in touch. And then eventually I was on the board, as you are. And we've just been, riding the wave ever since. So they're a really great organization, though. Shout out to them, pangeaseed.org, to find out more about what they are doing over there.
Good plug. I've known you, like I said, for your experience in that, what you mentioned, your environmental education, nonprofit management, working in the government sectors, but I know you also have strong analytical and communication skills. You've got this unique expertise in really understanding data and utilizing that information to really help business decisions. But you've been in a few roles. Your career has taken a pivot. So today, when people ask you what you do, like what's your bio line? What do you say? What do you tell them you do?
I tell them I get shit done. I know that's like so funny, but seriously, that's what I say, because sometimes that's just the easiest answer. Mm-hmm. When you don't fit in someone's box, right? When you play in multiple realms like I do, it can be really hard to define and a bit confusing. People's eyes start to glaze over. They're like, what? So I either say that or I say I'm a consultant. Honestly, I've actually really tried very intentionally to not answer that question with what do I do for work?
Why is that?
Yeah, it's just like, I feel like for too long, I've defined myself by and all of us, right? A lot of us by our work. Mm-hmm. A few years back, I made this decision of like, what if I didn't say like what I did for work? What if I didn't use that anymore? And it's a bit liberating. And so, yeah, when you answer that question with non-work things, conversation that ensues is it's a lot more interesting. So when people ask what I do, I usually respond with, I try to spend as much time outside away from my computer as possible. That's what I do. But yeah, also other things, other fun things.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit, because I know if we kind of look back at your career journey, your pathway, you're doing a lot of work now. Obviously, you've made a pivot into Salesforce expertise as a consultant. But what brought you here? I mean, you were working in the for the National Park Service. You've done some climate adaptation work. You did some work with the San Diego Zoo, their Wildlife Alliance. So, give us a little bit of a journey path of how you got to where you're at today. Like, what brought you to this state here?
Yeah, it's been a wild journey. So I wanted to be a marine ecologist since I was 12 years old, diving in the California kelp forest. I actually got my dive certification the year that PADI, the dive network, lowered the age to be able to scuba dive. And that's the year I got in, 12. And I still remember diving off the Channel Islands in California and being like, people get paid to do this. How can I get paid to do this?
Yeah.
And so that kind of budded my marine biology, lineage. And so went to college for that, got all the way to my master's degree. And then I was kind of on that PhD track, right? Because once you get into academia, it's this is the way. And I just felt that, I don't know, it just really wasn't for me. I was really interested in communicating science, because I was we're all here in the lab and this is great, but who knows about this stuff? How does the general public care about it? And so I kind of came to a decision point, I guess. And that's when my graduate advisor had been hey, they're looking for someone over at the National Park Service to communicate science for the parks, because there is I'm assuming people listening have been to a national park. They have the scientists and they have the interpreters. Yeah. And those are separate people, separate groups, and they don't often commingle. And so the park I was working at, they had that same issue, that you had the interpreters who were interpreting the history, but not necessarily natural resources or the science that was going on. So that's kind of how I got into that world. And really dove deep into conveying science to the public. And then I was a park ranger the last time we had a change of administration, the current one. We won't, he who must not be named. And so we kind of all saw the writing on the wall a little bit. It wasn't as bad, or it was bad, but not as bad as it is right now. And so kind of went looking for something new. And that brought me to doing more climate adaptation work in Southern California, really bringing people together, because I had been in science, I had been in kind of nonprofits and government. And so I knew how to have conversations between those different groups. And that was really valuable, bringing people together who might not necessarily, be on the same page. So I did that for a bit. And then honestly, through COVID and just working on climate change issues, which is a lot, I just got burned out, to not use the climate change lingo, but I got burned out. And my husband and I, around that same time, we kind of discovered the financial independence community, and we really wanted to travel the world. And so I knew two things were true in that. In kind of environmental science, you're never going to make a huge amount of money, and that's not super important. But if you want to be on the financial independence route, I was going to have to do something a little bit different. And I also knew that work that I was doing was very integrated in the community, and that is important. But I wasn't that wasn't for me anymore. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to go rock climbing, and we'll talk about that. But, and so I was okay, well, in order to do this, I need to do something different. And I was oh my goodness, I've already spent 7 years, Derek, in higher education. I can't do it again. I can't go back to school.
Weren't gonna do it.
It's financially, lifetime, all that. I just I couldn't do it. And so I actually heard on one of the financial independence podcasts, it's called Choose FI, shout out, a gentleman by the name of Bradley Rice and Anita, her name was Anita Smith at the time. Now it's Anita Jones. Okay. Shout out to those guys. And they were talking about Salesforce careers. And
Did you know anything about Salesforce before? I mean, this was the first time hearing about it, right? Because you're a science communicator, you're working on climate adaptation, you're working for the national parks. You're Salesforce?
Yeah, I had no idea. I'd actually gone to there was a climate conference in San Francisco where Salesforce is headquartered, and Mark Benioff had been there, who's the CEO of Salesforce. and we had a like meet and greet. And I was like, oh, like, who are you?
You met him? You met the CEO?
I mean, it was like casual, like group networking, but he was there. And I was like, Salesforce, like, that sounds cool. Like, what do you do? And so I still had no idea, like, what that was.
That's funny.
I was like, that sounds great.
And tell us real quick, for those that don't know, I mean, a lot of people know, but just in case, Salesforce is what is it?
Yeah, great question. Everyone's like, do you do sales? I'm like, not really. Yeah. So Salesforce is a CRM, a customer relationship management platform. Mm-hmm. There are many, right? There's like things like HubSpot, Monday.com, like there's the sky's the limit. It's tech, right? But Salesforce, I would say, is the more robust of those CRMs, very powerful. And so companies across sectors use Salesforce to manage their client base, their relationships, all that kind of thing. And so what I would do as a Salesforce consultant or a professional is like either work within a company to manage that database or work as a consultant to help companies like build their database, right? So Salesforce is like software as a service. So you get sold a license like you would like Microsoft or anything like that. And then as a consultant, I work with those companies to help customize Salesforce to meet their needs.
Okay, so you catch wind of this thing called Salesforce, and you decide, hey, maybe I should learn some more because there's an opportunity for some financial freedom here, so I can go travel the world. You've made a pivot. You'd already made a pivot to get out of climate work because you were feeling just a little burnt out, and I want to touch on that too. Were you feeling burnt out because you didn't feel like we were making enough progress? Did you feel like I'm talking to the same audience all the time? Brands and companies don't really take this seriously. People don't take. What was it? What was the burnout from?
Yeah, it is. It's like kind of a modge podge of all those things. And I know that we've talked about this of just, I don't want to like downplay. There's very important work out there going on. There are people on the front lines doing this, and it is a hard fight because you keep saying the same thing and things don't change, or they don't change as fast as they like need to be changing. And that's really hard, right? When that's your every day. And again, this was when I made this decision, it was like during COVID. So you have like kind of multiple existential crises happening at one time.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa. And we were seeing just the back end of the funding landscape and the political landscape. And it was a lot. And I'm like, am I even making a difference here? Like, and I think the answer for many people is yes, but I just didn't feel it myself for me. It was just, it's hard to hit your head against that wall for over and over, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I know it's something you're still obviously passionate about and you're still doing work on, I think. But this new path, so yeah, let's now take us back to this, you catch wind of Salesforce. What does that mean? What do you do with that information? Where do you take it?
Yeah. So after I heard that podcast, I went through this talent stacker career development program because I was like, I know nothing about Salesforce, but you could learn it for free. And then you could make 6 figures, or I was like, whoa, that's insane.
Too good to be true.
And so I went through, Salesforce has a online learning platform called Trailhead, where you can, there's different certifications that you obtain. So you can basically skill up. And then I joined this career development program because I was like, okay, my entire background is not Salesforce.
Right.
How am I going to convey this in my resume or in an interview? How am I going to get experience so someone would trust that I could actually do what I'm saying?
Because you're starting from zero, and even with that all of that schooling, your master's degree, all of this, it's you're saying it didn't really count or didn't feel like it was going to count, right? You were starting from scratch.
Yeah. So, and that was super scary. And I wouldn't say I was starting from zero because I had a lot of, and I think this is important for people to get across, when they're doing a career pivot, that doesn't negate everything you were before. Right? I think I navigate a lot with professionals in this space, and they're like, oh, well, I'm new. No one's going to hire me because I don't have any experience. I was like, weren't you doing this for 20 years?
That is experience. There was experience that you got there, right? No matter what you were doing, that's a really good reminder.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a reminder there that no matter what you are doing while you're doing it, So you're kind of talking about looking back, like count that experience. It's really valuable. But I also think if you are doing something that maybe you're not super excited about, what can look around and kind of go, I am going to learn everything I can about everything that is here within my reach because it will count going forward, right?
Yep. And I would even argue like it was because of that like previous experience that actually made me a better consultant. Because in Salesforce, like understanding the business is half the battle, if not more than half the battle. So it's like I came from all these different backgrounds and I just leveraged that because I'm like, oh, well, I know the right questions to ask.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't know that if I hadn't had that like previous experience. So yes, like understanding how to configure Salesforce, that was important as well, but not as important as everything else that came before.
You just said something that's really important, kind of consulting 101. It's like knowing the right questions to ask, and that to your point really comes with that experience. So that's what makes for a good consultant is somebody who has been around for a little bit and done the work and had different experiences and can be able to go, okay, observe, see, ask good questions and help get to the bottom of answers. Mm-hmm. How long did you take kind of getting that, Salesforce expertise and doing your trailhead? Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
How long did that take? And how long before you were like, okay, I'm on to something new here and this is all great?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I think back and I'm like, oh man, I spent 7 years becoming a marine ecologist, which is important. That was great. And I love that experience for me. But I took 6 months scaling up on Trailhead. And it cost me a fraction of what...
Did that make you rethink things? Like that's I think something pretty significant. That's a moment where you're like, wait a minute. Or was everything you did in the past all worth it? This was just different.
Yeah, I mean, I have no regrets. I'll be the first person to say that. I very much value all the experience I have gained over the years in different realms. I think that's what makes me good at what I do. But, oh man, it definitely hurts, right? When you're like, oh, I could have saved all those, student loans or there's just different ways to get to different places. So, yeah.
So you do it in 6 months and you obviously had to have some confidence to say, I've got the skills. What was it like kind of going out and doing your first, consulting bits or in, the diving into that space as sort of a newbie with, your 6 months of training? What was that like?
Oh, terrifying. Still scary.
Tell us what got you through it.
Yeah, it is scary. I mean, consulting can be like a fire hose, right? And also like I continue to work with the Talent Stacker program because I really believed in it. It helped me get into the space. And I enjoy working with other like career pivoters, just giving them like the support that they need to get through that transition. But yeah, it's scary. I mean, imposter syndrome is not nothing, right?
Right.
And I know so many people suffer from it. And it's interesting because I kind of came to the like awareness or realization that, man, there's the stories that society tells us, and then there's the stories that we tell ourselves. And whew, that second like bin of stories is like really powerful, right? And so it's like if you can start to like flip the switch in your head of like, oh, I can do this, and I am capable, and I have a lot to offer. That can really, really help get over some of those fears, get over some of the scaries, and then obviously you got to put the work in, right? You got to like understand the space, and you have to add value. But if you can, it's like, I work with a lot of career switchers, and sometimes I tell them, I'm like, I'm here. I believe in you, but you have to believe in yourself. Like, I can't teach you out of that. Right. I can encourage you and I can be here with you in this dark place that we're in together. But you gotta believe in yourself at the end of the day.
And I like what you said. You've got to change that narrative or that story, because we can often tell, you could have told yourself, I can't do this. I'm a marine ecologist. Like I shouldn't be here. Why am I here? I can't do this. But you have to, kind of, like you said, mind shift, open that up and say, no, I'm capable. I can do this. This is what I'm good at. And it can be tough to do, but it's a good reminder that all of us go through this. And to your point with imposter syndrome, like we're all just trying to figure it out. And people sometimes appear like they've really got it together, but guess what? They're just figuring it out too. We're all just
the truth, Derek. Like
stumbling our way through it all.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true.
How I want to know, I guess, getting over that, and you were saying, you try to help others get over that sort of fear, change their mindset. But what has helped you? You think what has helped you be so adaptive and able to evolve and progress? What gives you that confidence to do what you're trying to teach others? Were there factors that have really helped fuel your success so far, and kind of what drives you?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think two things. The first, keeping in mind my ecology background, that adaptation and evolution rarely occurs without a stressor, right? A disturbance in the force, as it were. So stress is a feature, not a bug. Learning to really embrace the stress, taking everything with that growth mindset of, instead of like, oh, I'm going to fail, like, what can I learn from this? Especially in the Salesforce ecosystem, it's vast, right? There's so much to learn. There's no way that one person can know it all. So it's really like, yeah, you might fail, and that's gonna happen. But what will you do next? I think is like really, really important. I think that's gotten me pretty far. And then I think the second part of that, and this was a huge one for me, because like I had the dream jobs, right? I was a marine ecologist. I was a park ranger. The things that everyone wants to do.
Hat included, like the
Hat
badge, the
included,
uniform.
dude. I had the hat. Yep. And I loved it. And that was my identity. Right?
Yeah.
The thing that you want to do since you were 12 years old.
That's right. Yeah, I was about to say that, but I'm like, that's exactly it. Yeah, so you dreamed it, you worked for it, you got it.
Yep. And that is, the plight of the millennial. But I think for me, that was something that was really helpful and that's what I say when people ask me what it is I do. This was part of that like growth, was decoupling myself, like my identity from my job to who I actually was. And for me, that was like super important because, and I talk with a lot of people about this, of they have this struggle to like let go. They're like, oh, but I'll no longer be a teacher, or I'll no longer be a this or this. And I'm like, well, you still do those things. But yeah, you might get paid to do something different now. And like, then you still just do that in your normal life, but there's no like breakdown here. You're not disappointing yourself. So I think for me, at least, that was a pretty powerful thing to move forward.
So with that decoupling, does that allow you, I mean, I want to touch a little bit because I know you spend so much time, working from the road. I know at one point you were calling it from it seemed like a different country every time we had a different meeting at Pangea Seed or something. I think you're anchored down now, but you and your husband won some sort of grant, I think, right? The Live Your Dream grant. So I guess I want to know, maybe tell us about that. What this sort of sabbatical, I don't know if those two were tied together, I can't remember, but let's talk about living and working on the road, this idea of decoupling, and how, I don't know, I start with that. Tell me about just your experience of being on the road, working from the road, because that seems that you're prioritizing you living the way you want to live, and then, by the way, working as well and making a living.
Yeah. So kind of post-pandemic, my husband and I got married in the pandemic. We did the COVID elopement, which is exciting. And a lot of our family lived north of the Canadian border, so we weren't able to really see them until the borders opened up. And I think COVID was formative for everyone, right? Everyone took maybe different lessons from that time. But one of the lessons that we took was like, oh man, it's short, right? Like life is short. Yeah. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. And we had some like other family things that played into this, but we're like, we can't wait till like we're 65 to like do these things. Like we want to go rock climbing. We want to climb big mountains. And like, goodness knows, I hope I'm still doing that by 65 years old.
Right.
But maybe not, right? Like
just in case.
Yeah, just in case. And so we're like, we got to go now. And at that point, like I was getting to Salesforce. My husband already has like a remote role. And I'm like, well, what's keeping us here? So we did kind of like a little mini version. We went to Canada for 3 months, put our house up for rent. And then we're like, we could keep going. What if we kept going? And like, obviously that's scary, right? Because you're doing something different that like, I have zero friends who've done this. So there was no like, this is how you
have a mentor.
Yeah. And people also, when you tell them I'm taking like a sabbatical or a mini retirement and like you're 33 years old, they're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? What? How? And so we're like, well, we're still working. We're just gonna do it from other places. And so yeah, we went on the road. We did a year in North America, just rock climbing and mountaineering, just something that we love. It's like we could use any excuse to go see the country. This was just a good one.
Yeah.
And the Live Your Dream grant actually comes in. There's a certain type of rock climbing called trad climbing, traditional climbing.
Okay.
It's like where you put your own like gear into the wall. So you know, there's no dying. That's what I tell my mom. And this gear is like expensive, like as it should be. You're trusting your life to it.
Are those like the what are those called? Pitons or pitons?
Yeah, they're like kind of removable pitons. They're called cams.
Cams, yeah.
But they're like $80 each, and you need like 20 of them, right?
Oh, geez, yeah.
Yeah, and so the husband was like, we should get into trad climbing. And I was like, girl, like, that's a lot of money that, like, no.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, in my background, I do a lot of grant writing. And so he finds this grant, and he's like, Alex, I found it. This is how we're going to do it.
No way. How funny.
Yeah, it was the American Alpine Club, shout out, and the North Face, double shout out. And they're like, yeah, just like, write this grant for something like you're going to level up to do. And so Thomas is like, we could do like trad multi-pitch, like just this crazy thing in one of our favorite climbing places in Squamish, which is just north of us. And he's like, we'll write this grant and we'll get the money and we'll get the gear and we'll do the thing. And I was like, okay. And then we get it.
And you're like, now what? Now
I know. I was like, oh, now we have to do it. Now we have to do the climb. So that was great. And I joke that's the only time I'll ever be sponsored by the North Face. Unless they're listening and want to sponsor me again, I will happily take it. And
we're also taking sponsorships for the show. So North Face, call us.
That'd be great, right? We'll get sweet shirts.
Exactly.
So that was kind of a cool part of it, of our North American tour, as we called it. And then we had a lot of family that lives abroad that we hadn't seen because of the pandy. And so we're like, well, what if we just keep this going and we'll go to Europe and we'll do like a European tour with Iceland, which was amazing. And so, yeah, we did that. When you're in North America, we just like kind of did our Prius, like poodled our Prius around and stayed in Airbnbs. And then in Europe, we kind of did the same thing. Because pro tip, if you stay in an Airbnb for a month, you get a discount.
Oh.
So just so anyone out there who's doing the digital nomad thing, make sure it's a month at a time. So yeah, it was amazing. And then we kind of got to the end of that. And when you move every 3 weeks, it sounds so glorious, right? But sometimes it grinds a little bit. And so after 3 years of doing that, we're like, maybe we're done for a second.
3 years you guys did it?
Yeah. So it was glorious.
Yes.
Highly recommend. Yeah.
So you decide though that it's time to buckle down. You guys are now up in Washington now? Is that
we're calling in from Cascadia, which should be its own podcast, really. We live in northern Washington, just south of the Canadian border. It's great. Love it.
Yeah. How what a great experience. That almost seems like we could probably just do an episode on just like what were the ups and downs, because how many different countries did you travel to?
A lot. Probably 10. Well, and I can like only stay in the EU for 90 days on 180 days. So like I guess the only positive thing about Brexit is you can have an escape to the UK. You can like reset the clock basically. Okay. So we didn't have to come back to America. We could just keep going.
Wow.
Yeah.
3 years is a long time though. I guess, what so far, you mentioned kind of this, whether I think you were talking about kind of the fear of failure or just failures and lessons along the way. Have you evolved this? If you look back, is there anything that you sort of like look back, wish you would have done differently? Or have you had any, sort of failures or big lessons learned along the way? What things have gone wrong? I always think that's fun to talk about.
What things have gone wrong? Interesting.
And maybe there are none yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I was pretty happy with doing the digital nomad thing. It's obviously like a scary leap. And when people ask me about it now and they're like, well, how do you do it? And I'm like, you just do it. You like, that's the thing. You just got to like take action. And like so many people, which brings my heart like sadness, like just don't. Like they just don't take action. And granted, like we were in a very good place. Like we don't have kids, although I think you could do it with kids. We don't have like our parents are in good health, like all that. So there's some active privilege there that I always want to recognize. But I think a lot of times people just don't, just because it's scary and it's weird. And like there are a lot of things that America makes hard to navigate if you don't, again, fit in the box, like healthcare.
Yeah.
One. So there's things you just have to like kind of figure out, and sometimes it gets weird, but ultimately like 10 out of 10 would do it again.
And you won't know if you don't go. And I think that is, I want to connect this to just this idea of career pivots like you did, because I think it's the same kind of advice, right? What advice would you have for somebody who wants to do a career pivot or be a digital nomad? I think you just answered it. You just have to do it. But what advice do you have for somebody who's going to take that big leap like you did and go into something totally new and totally different, and you just have to go all in? What other advice do you have?
Yeah, I think my big one there, and I'll take a note out of my friend Bradley Rice's book, and I think he's even took this from someone else, but it's like choose your hard. Like where you are right now is probably hard. Like especially if you're looking for a career pivot, you're like, oof. Like maybe you got a bad boss, maybe you got just a bad working environment. And then like changing a career is very hard, but it's like, which of those hards is harder, right? Is if you stay and be miserable, or if you are like working towards something better. Like, I don't know. I think for me, it's like, obviously it was working towards something different, better. And I think, that's a conversation like we all have to have with ourselves. Right.
Yeah. When you look back and you sort of like piece all these together, whether it was your digital nomad experience, national park, climate work, Salesforce work, is there sort of a common thread that you've kind of noticed through them all? What are some of the lessons learned that you think are important for people to remember as they navigate their own career journeys? Yeah.
I think the common thread for me is I always seek out like, and this is like why I'm proud to know you, Derek, is like doing cool things with cool people, like always pans out. Right.
Yes.
So it's like
quote of the day. Nice one.
Right. It's just like, if I look back at my resume and I'm like, what's the thread? And I'm like, well, I've done a lot of cool shit. And like weird stuff. Right. I feel like I've never like put myself in a box, which is great. Obviously it's like not gone according to plan. And I think that's actually a good thing.
Same.
Right. I see myself as a very, very adaptable person. Some things I just like learn for the fun of it, for the sake of it. And I think that's really panned out too. But yeah, at the end of the day, I look at my resume and I'm pretty proud that I've just never been afraid to explore weird, different things and take lessons from different places and different people to like help people think differently wherever I am now. Right. And I think there's a lot of power to that. And again, like being able to switch that identity flip, or like that switch, right? Of like, no, this is who I am, not what I do.
I can't help it as you're saying that. I'm thinking of, you mentioned kind of looking back at your resume, and I'm almost imagining you're creating it. And I see some, it feels like there's some intention there. I wonder, did you always maybe have intention as you were building your career? Because I think we can, as you were describing that, my visualization was sort of like putting a little bit here. It's like a collage board, right? You're building it as you go with intention. Do you think you knew what you were doing all along, that you wanted a career resume that you could look back on and say, I like that. I like the way I've designed it. Or has it just sort of happened along the way and it's just now that you're taking note of it and appreciating it?
Yeah, I think we talked in the headline of this about transferable skills, right? And being able to leverage different skill sets. And I think if I like look back, I've been very good at cultivating transferable skills. So even if like, oh, I was a scientist doing like lab work, I'm like, cool. But like what other things? Right now I'm kind of a scientist, right? I still work with data, a lot of it. It's just like human data versus animal data. And like looking at a data set and pulling out trends and identifying what those things mean, it's the same. There's not like
Yeah.
a huge like magic ball, you know? Obviously there's like different understandings of the sectors and that kind of stuff. But I think for me, what's been really powerful is like, oh, I mean, with Pangea Seed, with Beneath the Waves, I was like learning how to do communications with different art forms and like then transferring those into skills I use today in marketing. Like, you know, you can market science, you can market a business. It's the same, it's all the same. So I think for me, it's been able to like kind of see those like buckets, those transferable skills buckets, and being like, ooh, how can I use this weird thing that I learned over here? And just being able to try it, you know, and go for it. And also being able to tell that story. And I think this is something a lot of career pivoters struggle with, or at least ones that I work with, is like, you have to be able to connect the dots for people. And I know that
tell them why, and to be able to tell them to your point, like, this is what I learned over here does count because here's how I can apply it, right?
Yes. And I think like easier said than done sometimes, obviously, but I don't know. I've worked with people from all sectors and I've been able to like help you connect those dots. So I'm like, you can do it too, but you have to like, someone told me this once, like, if you don't tell your story, someone else will.
Yeah.
And so like, it's really important that you tell your story because it's like, what do you want people to convey, right? What do you want people to understand about you? And it's the best that you cultivate that narrative versus someone coming up with something completely off cuff, right? So I think that that's also a really good skill. And obviously as like communications background, like storytelling has been, I would say, also a through line throughout all the work that I've done, just different types of stories.
I can't help but also think of my time when I was a studio art major. I graduated with a studio art degree, and a few years after that, I went back and I wanted to go back to school, and I was going into an MBA program. And that was my whole thing, was like, I know you're going to have a lot. Our program was made up of a lot of engineers, you know, people with business backgrounds already. But I was like, here's why you need an artist in here. You know, I might be one of the only ones. It ends up there was one other studio art major who's still a good friend of mine. But I was like, hey, let me connect the dots here for you and tell you why you need me and why my perspective will add value to this program. So that was a good reminder that you just brought that up. But yeah, it's important to connect the dots for people, right?
Artists are the most important people, probably like that, and teachers and nurses. But artists help us see the world differently. And that is like such power, right? They help us see like for the better or the worse. But I always encourage like my science friends. I'm like, yeah, you should work with an artist, and they'll like completely flip your entire like way of thinking around. So grateful for those artists out there.
I just heard a statistic over at my alma mater at UC Irvine. I think some upwards of like 50% of our STEM students there come from kind of creative backgrounds. Either they went like to an art school, so they've got that blend of sort of artistic background, but then applying it into science. And to me, that is like such a beautiful merger and so important, because you're right. I think we have to appreciate. It's so important to appreciate the arts and what artists bring. So yeah, that perspective is always so fresh. Speaking of sort of young people in college, I want to ask you. If you look back, I mean, you've got a lot of schooling. You did your master's degree, you did your undergrad degree, then your master's, and how do you think of college today for young people? When people ask you if they're looking for advice, like, oh, Alex, I want to do, what you do. Should I? Is this a path I should take? You alluded to just sort of the financial burden that comes along with it, the time that it takes, but what's your opinion on college these days?
Yeah, it's interesting, especially in the environmental sciences, because it's been a doozy the last few months. If you had asked me this question like back before November, it might have been different. And I just want to take a moment of solidarity for all of our public sector friends out there who are literally enduring the systemic like dismantling of science in our country. That's super scary. My heart goes out to all of you, because if you need a drink, like, call me, let's go get one. Seriously. I think with that said, like, my advice to the next generation is, and like, it's hard because I see this a lot. I always see people like pass the buck, especially in environmental science, like the youth will save us, right? They're going to be the next generation. And I think that's a bit of a bullshit. cop out. Like we're all on this crazy train together. So like no one's without responsibility. But for those looking to get into this field, I think right now you need to be very strategic in this moment. Like have a very keen eye on the job landscape and like where you might be fitting into it. And I would say if ever there was a time for essential, like transferable skills being essential, it is now. Like you might be going to college for an environmental science degree, but make sure that there are like other things that you are building in that quiver. Maybe it's like GIS, like geographic information systems. Maybe it's coding. Maybe it's some other piece. But like, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to go play in the tide pools, like, I don't want to be the dream crusher. I don't.
Yeah.
But I want you to also be able to feed yourself. Like I want you to be able to have like gainful employment. And what I don't want is like the next generation to be in like stupid amounts of college debt, which is happening. And then there's nothing for them on the other side. So just like be very aware and also know that you can still do very important things for the planet, even if it's not your 9-to-5 job. In some cases you can do more. Like I would argue I probably do more like trail work or like be outside in nature more now than when I was a park ranger. So to the point of like college experience though, I very much value my college experience. I met a lot of amazing people, some of which are still my like closest friends today. And I learned a lot of important lessons, many of which were actually not in the classes. So I don't know if that tells you a lot, but I went to San Diego State. Shout out to the Aztecs. And they very much like pushed us to like work experience, study abroad. So for me, it was great. With that said, is it for everyone? No. And like everyone, we should like think about that. I feel like in this country, we need to have a reckoning of like, no, college might not be for everyone. And that's like, great. That's okay.
No, yeah, that's okay.
It shouldn't be this like stalwart measure of success that it is. Because we need people who do other things that aren't like from a result of a terminal degree. Right. And there are many ways up the proverbial mountain. So I would say like, go with intention. Know that at 18 years old, you might not have it all figured out, and that's okay. Like take a breath, and then don't just go to college because someone told you should.
And come out of it, like you're saying, sort of eyes wide open and ready to move, have a toolkit available that you can adapt and you're ready to pivot on a moment's notice sometimes, because I think the job landscape has changed, is changing. Speaking about those young professionals, I wonder, is there anything that worries you about young professionals today, or maybe that has you excited and intrigued about them?
Yeah. For me, the youth are amazing, right? I work a lot with youth in like as a mentor. Some of the things that I see that are like, ooh, I don't even know if this is just with youth, just kind of generally, is like our ability for critical thinking is like rapidly declining.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, AI.
Woo, right.
Yeah. No, it's real for sure.
Yeah. And I do a lot with AI. So I'm like, but it's like, just because ChatGPT said it doesn't mean you don't have to think about it. Right. Like, right. It's a tool, not the end all. I think that's a little like scary for me. And then also, and I wish I would have told myself this at 18 years old, is like, you can take a big swing and fail, and that's okay too.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. That's so good.
Yeah. I think that's a lot. But what does give me hope for the youth is like, they're hungry, man, and they're capable. Like they know how to use all the technology, which is amazing. I think they just need to trust themselves that they can do it and that they can speak up. And like, there's a lot right now, right? I worry for the youth for that. Like the world is a heavy place right now. So it's just like, find your light and just go, right? Do the thing that you want to do.
And maybe go and get out there and do some traveling like you did. That experience, I always tell young people, I'm like, please go travel, go stay somewhere for longer than a weekend. Like go be there, live there, experience it. Alex, what's exciting for you out on the future, or about your future? What's going on for you? What's out on the horizon that maybe has you excited?
Oh man, lots of stuff. I was saying before we jumped on this, I just bought a house today, so that's exciting.
Today?
Yeah, signed the papers right before. I was like, we have to be done by 10:30 so I can prepare for this podcast.
Congratulations.
So yeah, did that. I've been taking a ceramics class, which is pretty cool. It's very humbling. I'm like, oh, sometimes my mom's like, you're good at everything. And I was like, not everything. Ceramics being one of them. And then this summer, my husband and I, we are climbing 2 very big mountains. Mount Baker, which is in our backyard, and Glacier Mountain.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, work is always cool, but that's the stuff I'm really excited about.
Well, thanks for that. Let's wrap with sort of 3 things to keep in mind for people who are early in their career journey, maybe getting ready, thinking about a career pivot. What do you want people to know and remember from based on your experience?
That's a good question. I am a huge reader. I love reading, and anytime people ask me for advice, I'm like, go read this book.
Okay. Book recommendation?
So my 3 books, the first one is Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. That single-handedly changed my entire perspective. Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
Also, if he wants to sponsor me, like, I'll take it.
Same.
And then 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, I think is a really good, just, level setter of, you only have 4,000 weeks. What are you going to do with them?
Oh.
Yeah.
4,000 weeks, like, in your life? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I know when you put a number to it, you're like, oh, shit.
I'm always thinking in terms of 52, but yeah, you kind of do some math. You're like, okay, wow, all right. That's great. And actually, that gets me thinking, maybe I'm going to start asking my guests for book advice, because that's really good. Those are 3 good ones, so thanks for that.
Of course.
Alex, last bit here. We'll wrap it up. But so you can go back and make sure you signed all your papers correctly. But I like to give my guests here an opportunity for a soapbox moment where you either get to shout out somebody, something that you're excited about or stoked on, or call out something that you're not so happy with. So that's kind of a gripe session or a rave session. But what's on your mic? The box is yours.
Yeah, I think my box is right now, if you love it in this country, you better go support it. So if you like your public lands, go support them. If you like your public libraries, make sure to donate. It's like all the things that really make life worth living. They're, it's under threat. So make sure that you go out there and you participate and donate if you can. Make sure that you're using your voice because, we want to keep these things around for a long time. So I'm off of the box.
You're off. I love it. That's really great, though. That's a great point. Alex, thank you so much. Thanks for great conversation, all of those fun insights. I feel like there's still so much more I could unpack with you. So I know we'll stay in touch. Maybe have you back to give us an update on the new house and those new mountains that you're climbing. But thank you so much for an inspiring conversation, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Derek. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what you heard, be sure to check back weekly, subscribe to the show, and if you want to be featured on the show, come hit us up at theunderswell.com. We'd love to hear from you.